Hi there, I'm Janelle Schalk and I lead enablement and sales for security at Trace3. Welcome to a special bonus episode of Secure Correspondence before we kick off the official season 2. With me today is Dave Abbott and David Wan. So David is a principal solutions architect on the security team here at Trace3 with a primary focus on foundational network security. He leads a number of our Cisco initiatives at Trace3 and supports our clients and regional teams to better understand foundational networking, infrastructure, and how to effectively layer security to protect our clients' holistic ecosystem no matter where it lives. And Dave is the secure hybrid work architect at Cisco and has primary focus on zero trust, secure access service edge or SASE architectures and more. So over the past 7 years at Cisco, he's helped his customers and his clients migrate away from traditional networking and security models and into more of an agile deployment that enables both hybrid work and hybrid cloud adoption. He's a firm believer that every customer environment can benefit from a cross-architectural approach to their projects. And he recently finished his MBA. Congratulations, Dave.
Thank
and
you.
he's currently working on his second CCNP. That's impressive. So David's out in California. Dave's in North Carolina. I'm in Utah. We're all loving the spring weather. Finally seeing the snow recede over here in Utah. And let's dive in. So welcome, David and Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks. Glad to be here. Yeah. Happy to
be here. Happy to have you. So tell me, Dave, what is the reality of the current work model landscape? Can you help us level set how we're seeing employees interact with work, how it's different than last year, where it's going, and kind of we've seen this incredible evolution over the last 3 years because of COVID. We've all been talking about it. We all know about it. And now that people are really going back into work some days, working from home some days, working from different places all over the place, would love to have kind of your perspective on what's happening and where it's going.
Yeah, it certainly has been an interesting evolution. You look back at 2020 with COVID, and certainly, absolutely, everyone's work mantra was disrupted. We were so used to most of our employees being in office, and now most people were working from home. And we're 3 years out from that. It's crazy. It's been that long. But a lot of different industries have been adjusting in various different ways. And so part of it does depend on the industry that you're within. But what we've seen is for knowledge workers or employees that can get the majority of their work done at home, still retaining more of a remote work type structure. And then, of course, for other employees that have to be in office or have to be in a manufacturing site or within a hospital, they're going to remain on-prem. Yet we're seeing this adjustment now to a more hybrid work type model where we want to start bringing our employees back into the office to help with developing culture or have people to collaborate in a more effective manner when they're in person. The challenge, of course, is not many people want to commute. And so we see this overcorrection at times with customers where they start making it a mandate and they're forcing people to come in 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week even into the office. And the challenge is not many employees want to do that. In fact, many are looking at jobs that are purely remote or offer primary remote as an option. And so talent enforcement to be brought in is absolutely critical when we're thinking about retention. And so what we're seeing now is employers starting to recognize that they need to make their offices a magnet, something that employees want to come into and have a better end user experience with, and encourage them to come in 2 or 3 days a week to work with their coworkers, but make it a positive experience rather than it being a mandate.
I love that, Dave. I love the making it a magnet, not a mandate mantra. I know that all of us have seen the incredible amount of articles that are out there around the benefits of working from home or having a hybrid environment. I know a lot of folks that are actually very happy to be back in the office as well, because they were in this kind of nightmarish situation where they were working from no real home office. They didn't have any separation from maybe kids running running all over the place. And it's great as parents to be closer to your kids, but it's also great, I think, to have a little bit of break too when you need to focus and have some really dedicated time. So that hybrid ecosystem is where most everyone that I'm talking to is seeing. So as more companies move towards allowing a hybrid work model, there's a lot of potential for introducing new cyber threats, right? New security threats. So, and really, it's even beyond cyber; it's physical security threats too, because maybe your homes might not be protected at the same level as the data center or the offices or whatever, where different things are. Though a lot of people have great, cameras, they've got other types of things. It's such an interesting time for us in security that everything really coalesced when we actually had the technology to support and secure things when we had to go into the houses for COVID and now in this hybrid environment. So anyway, besides my rambling there, companies really, of course, need to stay informed about the latest developments to protect themselves most effectively from different types of attacks. What are some of the David? What are some of those developments that we're seeing as late?
We've seen an increase in the need for threat intelligence services, such as Cisco Talos and others. As attacks become more sophisticated and vectors increase, especially a lot of these workers are moving beyond the perimeter and working in dynamic work environments. And as they're working from home or in these hybrid environments, they're accessing different services, right? They're not only accessing their work services, but they're accessing social services and personal services as well, and kind of mixing that in. So to combine threat vectors out of social media and personal services, as well as the corporate applications that we access, I think there's a lot of different threats. So these threat intelligence services, they help us stay ahead of existing and emerging vulnerabilities that we may not be aware of in the domains that we're now addressing, that our users are accessing our applications out of. So we see definitely a increased demand for that intelligence, and to feed a lot of security products within different platforms.
Could you, not to put you on the spot, David, but could you come up with maybe 3 or 4 major types of intelligence that organizations have really been focusing on getting those intelligence feeds about that may be related more to the hybrid work environment? And please,
Sure.
Dave, jump into
Sure.
as well.
Sure, like social media phishing, smishing, I think has been a very large growing vector, and especially as people work within hybrid environments, they're constantly checking social media, and that social media checking is becoming more relevant in the work environment as well, as companies are also reaching out via social media and leveraging social media tools. So having intelligence around that vector, I think, is very important. Another vector, is the traditional vector. I think email is still probably, one of the largest vectors for, people accessing, both work and home resources, especially if they have multiple email clients on the same box, or if they're accessing multiple email accounts. Correlating threats across those different accounts, I think, is very important for a lot of our clients. And the final would be like malware as well, just browsing and surfing and downloading different attachments, just generally as you're doing work. I think people are used to getting attachments within their work email, and securing that. But once you mix in other vectors of communication, and different files get distributed to workers out of your traditional means of distribution, we have to be aware of all those vectors, and malware can come in from so many different ways. So understanding what is emerging, what trends are happening within the threat landscape, helps mitigate those threats or get ahead of it, and look to those areas where we haven't traditionally been looking.
What's interesting there too, David, when you think about where some of these files are being hosted, the traditional manner was, well, I've got an internal file storage in my network, or I'm running it through an email service, and so we're going to scan those. But all of a sudden now I'm primarily using SharePoint, Box, or Dropbox, and those environments historically have not been scanned, both for content breaches with data loss prevention, but also for malware like you're talking about. And so if I'm able to compromise an end user's account and then start uploading malicious files into these cloud-based services, all of a sudden I've got a brand new threat vector I need to be watching out for. And most of our end users aren't educated to really look into those. They just think, well, I'm logging into this file storage. Of course it's protected. And so we're starting to see a need where we are introducing both inline security practices to protect our employees and corporate-owned machines, but also to do API-driven security into corporate-owned SaaS environments so that they can be scanned for both content filtering as well as for malware protection.
Yeah. Okay. Those were great points. So social media, email, browser security, malware, online storage. I'd like to add maybe in change management visibility to getting an idea of what changes are happening in the ecosystem. I'm hoping we're actually going to have a whole episode on securing change management. And then, we could talk for ages about how AI is impacting all of these things and making these phishing attempts, the malvertisements, all of these social media advertisements, making them super difficult to understand what's real and what's not, just to the typical and even more advanced end user. So I think we could talk for ages about that. But let's get into some of the challenges of hybrid work environments from a security standpoint. So I know we covered a few of them already, but what would you say, what are some of the biggest risks posed to companies when allowing employees to work in a hybrid role, knowing, to Dave, your point, that workers are really demanding that these days?
Yeah, I would say, delivering secure application access regardless of where the user is, in a zero trust kind of method. Also, collaborative tools, right? Like as we move to hybrid work environments or different paradigms of work, we have to change the tools we use to collaborate with our coworkers, right? Like if I want to send a file or share a file in the office with somebody, it's pretty easy to do that. But how do I share a file if I'm at home and if they're at home, right? And how do I secure that, the sharing of those, the collaboration there? So I think, both serving applications, dynamically to people wherever they are, and having those individual workers collaborate together. Those, to me, those are the largest challenges, I think, of that changing paradigm.
Yeah, and Dave, maybe on the flip side, what are some of the opportunities that we see from this shift in hybrid workers from a security and kind of general networking perspective?
Yeah, part of the challenge is that we are starting to distribute both where our workers are as well as distribute where our applications are. So the ability to unify those types of policies around access, around change management, around visibility, as well as orchestration and response becomes more critical than ever. So one of the biggest opportunities that we have is to start to lean into platforms that deliver that unification across all environments. And rather than utilize a tool that's dedicated to a specific environment, like just your data center or just an AWS instance, you start using tool sets that can work across all of them. And you have one single policy engine that then pushes that policy out to the respective environments. And you build those rule sets based on intent, based on what you're trying to accomplish, rather than having to be an expert in each individual domain. That's one of the big things that we've worked on here at Cisco, is to create our tool sets to be agnostic to the environments, and where you don't have to be an expert to every single one of them. AWS policy may look very different to an Azure or GCP policy when you have to build it out from scratch. But if I can push that dynamically into those different environments, that becomes a lot easier. The same thing goes for that secure access, like David brought up, is I want to think about secure access based on policy for my user, no matter where the app lives. It should be zero trust access, whether it's a SaaS app to internet, to a private application I host or is in the cloud. It really shouldn't matter to the end user. And from an authentication perspective and from a policy perspective, I should ensure that I'm doing a single and multi-factor approach the same exact manner. That way, I know that my policy and my access is secure, and I have one place that I go into to validate all of that. And so we're seeing this opportunity crop up now as folks are maybe sometimes remote, sometimes they're working from the office. I shouldn't have two different policies. I shouldn't have two different ways of access depending on where you exist in that current day and what device you're coming in on. It should all be the same unified approach. And that ultimately drives simplicity for our IT admins as well as for end users to help increase productivity. But it also increases our security efficacy because now I don't have to try to manage 2 or 3 or 4 different policy instances. I have one environment that I can configure it in.
Yeah, that's great. And both of you touched on Zero Trust. We are having a Secure Correspondence Season 2 episode on Zero Trust rather. So tune in for more information on that and really the evolution of Zero Trust and everything that you were just talking about, David and Dave, around orchestrating, around automation. I mean, that's huge. There's so much data now that is just flowing through our ecosystems, all of our clients' ecosystems. And it's kind of overwhelming, right? So how do we automate that? And there's so much technology now that actually is supporting all of those things. So it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's such an interesting time for COVID to have hit and drive the rapid adoption of some of these things that frankly just help overall from an operational perspective. Great points. So, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you, Dave and David, for your thoughts on securing the hybrid worker. It's been insightful. I've learned things. I hope our listeners out there have learned something helpful for their organization as well. If for our listeners, if you do have questions around what you've heard today, please reach out to Trace3 security team at security@trace3.com. Remember to tune back in for the rest of our episodes for season 2 on Secure Correspondence. We're going to be covering mergers and acquisitions security, wireless security, executive privacy and security, Zero Trust, like I mentioned, a lot more, lots more great stuff to come. So thank you again, Dave and David. Thanks so much for being here. And for now, I'm Janelle Schalk, wishing you well and letting you know that Trace3 Security has you covered.